professor here in the marketing department at Kogod. When Kelly Dennings asked me if I would like to host the ISM networking event, I was very happy to do so. I'm long been interested in social marketing. I studied social marketing as a MBA student and have worked in the area somewhat. But more importantly, here at Kogod, I teach a course called Marketing for Social Change. And there's some of my students here, as well as some students from the School of Public Health who are interested in social marketing. And there's quite an interest here among the AU students in social marketing. And I also just wanted to have the opportunity for the AU students to interact with some of the social marketers because I think it's a great field for them to think of and because 99% of our students do internships. So if you're looking for interns, definitely talk to our students. But I won't talk very long because we want to get going and we're very excited to have this speaker here. And I'm actually going to give her this small token from AU so I don't have to come back up here later. Something small for her to take back in her suitcase, not to weigh her down since she's here all the way from Australia. And with that, I think Kelly's going to, or Wynn, is going to say some words from the International Social Marketing Association.
For those of you who know me, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, social marketers around the world. And that's the way I always start because the International Social Marketing Association actually is international. We have members from almost every country, almost every continent around the world. We have representatives from every continent, I know. We are also allied with the Australian Association of Social Marketing, with the upcoming North American Social Marketing Association, and the European Social Marketing Association. When I was coming here, my daughter asked me again, what is social marketing? I said, well, social marketing is just a way of thinking, dear. It's you're saying, how am I going to solve this wicked problem? And where can I find the best tools? And honey, my daughter's 16, I said, I find the best tools in business and in marketing because I like the way they think and I like the way things have worked. That's my 5-cent definition of social marketing. Then when I was here, someone said, I'm new to social marketing. I said, well, isn't that interesting because I'm new to social marketing too. Every day for the last 20 years, I have been new to social marketing because there's so much for us to learn. So I'd like to invite you all to go to i-socialmarketing.org. If you're a student, put down $29 for an entire year and get a whole raft of benefits, including discounts on this, that, and the other. I'm not going to go into my elevator pitch now. What I am going to say is one of the things you will get if you become a member of the ISMA is access to people like Patrick Cook. Stand up, Patrick. Director of Social Marketing for IQ Solutions. Tom Bell. 20 years, was it, or 30? 25 years, the Director of Social Marketing for Ogilvy Public Relations. And me, but everybody needs a booby prize. Without further ado, I'm turning it back over to you after saying thank you to Sonia and thank you to Karen, who you're about to meet.
going to introduce our esteemed colleague who has come, as we've said, from across the world, and we're so happy to have her here. And I know we'll keep it at 30 minutes, and if we want Q&A afterwards, we've got some time if folks want to stick around. So Dr. Russell Bennett has 20 years of experience as a marketing expert in fields ranging from professional services to government services. She enjoys collaborating on research projects with industry to solve real-world problems, and she's the immediate past president of the Australian Association of Social Marketing. So, thank you.
Okay, well, g'day, everyone. Glad to be here experiencing the rush hour traffic. Okay, so I'm from Brisbane, which is up in the tropical area of Australia. So you can see sort of some images there of the Great Barrier Reef and the palm trees that we have on our campus. It is a really lovely campus located in the city on the river bend. And if any of you are ever in the area, please do look me up. We get a lot of passing visitors coming through, both practitioners and academics, and we're always very happy to see them come and visit the campus and have a bit of a chat with our staff. Okay, so I usually start these presentations with a definition of social marketing. So as already been alluded to, it's all about using marketing concepts. It's commercial marketing, but to solve social problems. It's used in addition to other approaches, and I think that's what makes us a bit different to the commercial marketers, is that we do link very closely with all sorts of other approaches. It's not a single way of doing things. Importantly, it's to influence individuals, communities, structures and society, and it's to bring about positive social change. And these are some of the examples I like to show, and as it turns out, there's actually 3 that are US, and I can see one from Tom's company down the bottom, The Heart Truth. So Road Crew is a really famous one. It was one I learnt as a student, and it's all about using service delivery to get people who are drinking off the road. So instead of putting public service announcements up, it was all about using decommissioned limousines to drive people around, pick them up from the bars and drop them home, and they would donate and contribute to the runnings of the program. The Verb campaign is another well-known one for physical activity, again here in the US. The Heart Truth, all about women and heart problems. We tend to associate heart problems more with men, so this is a huge program, and there's lots published on it, and I know that Tom could certainly talk about that a bit more later if anyone's interested. And the last one is from Australia. Snake Condoms is a classic 4P marketing approach to addressing problems with the Indigenous community in a regional area of the southern states. And essentially the problem was there was a high incidence of sexually transmitted diseases and teen pregnancies. And I've lost the screen. Kelly or anyone? Anyway, I'll tell you about that as we get the screen back. Effectively what they did was they had public service announcements, they had medical interventions, but nothing was working, and there was a very negative attitude in the Indigenous community about using condoms. So they adopted a peer selling approach where they got teenagers, they trained them up to be salespeople, they developed their own brand of condoms. They were not free, but they were fairly inexpensive. And then through peer selling, they would distribute the condoms to the community. One of the problems with Indigenous communities in terms of going to chemist shops or pharmacies is that Auntie so-and-so is normally behind the counter and she will go and tell your mum if she sees you coming in to buy condoms. So they couldn't even use the usual distribution outlets that you would normally associate with this problem. It's been a highly successful program, and because they weren't given away for free, they were sold. It's been a sustained program financially. There's been a whole bunch of merchandise. They used a narrow cast approach to the promotions. The peer sellers were called snake charmers, and it's been ongoing now for almost a decade, and there's a lot published on it, both on their website in the academic journals. So it's a really nice example of using commercial marketing techniques to bring about change socially. So we're just waiting for the reboot. Okay, well, I'll explain to you about the program I'm going to talk about tonight. Reduce Your Juice is a program that I got involved with 2 years ago. The Department of Climate Change, as it was then, had a grant program. So they put out $20 million for a whole range of different organisations and agencies to bid for in order to try and help low-income earners in Australia reduce their energy consumption. We were successful in getting $6.5 million of that $20 million, and it's a collaboration between the Brisbane City Council's Sustainability Unit, the Energy Company, and QUT. And so we basically posed a digital solution because energy is a really boring topic for most people. People don't wake up and go, today I'm going to think about my electricity bill. No one cares until the bill arrives. And then everyone runs around with their hands in the air going, turn off the air conditioning, stop using the bar fridge, kids, you know, what are you doing? And then it all settles down and no one talks about it again until the next bill occurs. So we decided that if we could inject a bit of life into the product category and if we could make it fun and interesting, but scalable and cost effective, that we might have a better chance of actually helping people change their behaviours. Typically in the energy area, we see a lot of information-rich campaigns, so there's an approach that assumes people just don't know enough. But we've had numerous programs in Australia that's all about teaching people what they need to do, and it just zero sort of registration. You could even post people energy-efficient light bulbs, and they would not leave the packet. You actually have to send someone to actually install them in order to actually get them working. And in fact, the Queensland Government did have a service, Climate Smart, where you could pay $50, someone would come and change all your light bulbs, give you a little meter, and off you go. And that actually worked really well. People were prepared to pay for that. So we knew that we needed to eliminate as many of the barriers as possible in developing this program. And we started off with a really broad brief. We were just doing digital. We didn't know if it was online modules, we didn't know if it was going to be a game, an SMS program, like what was it going to be. That cost us an enormous amount of money with the advertising agency that we worked with, because we sort of said to them, what should we do? And then they spent a whole heap of money sort of coming up with a whole variety of solutions. My advice in this area is, before you go to an agency, be very clear about the solution, because we spent an awful lot of money and went through 2 agencies to find the right one. So in the end, we settled on a game. And I've got a little bit of background in investigating the use of mobile phone games in behaviour change. And it's certainly an area that's really appealing in Australia. It's an area that a lot of government agencies are curious about, but a lot of them worry about the front page of the newspaper saying, you know, government spends $3 million on games. So sort of overcoming the resistance that we found with dealing with our federal partner, in that we said, well, we said we did digital, but now we're actually going to do games. We had to sort of find other words for it, and in the end we just went, you know what, it's a game. Oh, okay, well, you know, you've got the contract, so I guess you're going to do it. So here we are. Now I'm going to skip to the bit that I'm now actually up to. So digital is basically everywhere. And this was the reason that we went down this approach. We were targeting 18 to 35-year-old renters. We know that digital is just ubiquitous in their lives. And if you don't think that's true, just do a Google search on interesting digital programs, because these are some of the things that come up. There is an app that will help you quit. And you just pick what the reason for quitting is. You're sick of the corporate world, you want more dollars, and it texts your boss for you. There are message boards where you can find partners to go and run in groups. There is an app that helps you record the gifts that you give your girlfriends and the gifts that you get back, just so you don't sort of say to Alice, you know, thanks for the socks, when Alice actually gave you a pair of gloves. You can get Skype counselling, so from the comfort of your own bedroom, you can have a counsellor in the UK or Australia or Hong Kong or wherever it is that best suits you. There are no borders anymore to international services. There is a website to help you be an irresistible gentleman. Gives you tips. You can plug in a photo, they go, nah, change the wardrobe. This is the tips, this is what you've got to say. And they script you through your first date. There is also an app that helps you remember when to drink water. That one I would have thought is kind of a no-brainer, but anyway, there is an app that tells you and reminds you when to have your next glass of water. So if you aren't playing in the digital world, and if digital is not part of your social marketing program, then you are missing out on a major opportunity to not just communicate with your stakeholders, but also to deliver the service. So the customer customers' reality is smartphone ownership is just rising. Every time I do this presentation, I have to keep changing the statistics. Smartphone ownership varies depending on what research report you're looking at, but it's escalating and will be close to 100% very soon. Tablet ownership is increasing. Mobile phone apps are almost doubling each year. What I find interesting is that last year, for the first time, SMS messages declined. And it's not that people are sending less messages, it's they're using a different channel. People are using the internet to send messages. Now, why do you think that's the case? Why is it that people aren't SMSing using their phone service, they're using internet?
The cost is different.
Yes, the cost is different. So if you're a kid with very limited data, and data is like the currency of teenagers, you would use these services because you're not, you can access Wi-Fi. You don't have to use your phone credit. In fact, my nephew, when I spoke to him about not getting in cars with strangers if they gave him lollies, said, oh, no, I've got that under control. I'll never get in the car with someone with lollies. I'm like, that's good. He said, for free Wi-Fi, I might. Opens up a whole new world of problems.
Hey.
So, how can technology be used in social marketing? Well, it's cost effective for large markets. Social marketers have relied heavily in the past on advertising, and the reason for that is because it's cheap. The reach is extensive and it's low cost per person. But with the fragmentation of media patterns, it's a lot harder to get to the right people at the right time and communicate. But governments still have these populations that they need to communicate with, that they need to work with. So technology allows you to personalise and tailor the service, the message and the distribution channel in a really cost-effective way. It can also provide peer support, which helps overcome embarrassment. So if you've got a prostate problem and you don't particularly want to chat about it in the lunchroom at work, you can go online, you can find out some information, you may have to take some photos and self-diagnose, send those off to your doctor, and the doctor goes, well, you need to definitely, come in and have a bit of a chat. It can all be done 24/7 from the privacy of your own home or bedroom, and you can then link with other people if you need to then get extensive support. So breastfeeding mums, for instance, who are having trouble at 1 o'clock in the morning, can hook into a whole network using technology instead of having to, phone their mother or sister or friend and wait them for help. We've seen a rise in the citizen scientist. So technology facilitates self-monitoring. You can get little add-ons now to phones that can be a glucose meter. I'm sure that at some point we'll see inhalers that can help check your asthma levels, and there'll be a whole range of other bits and pieces. So this really places a lot of empowerment in the hands of the consumer. It provides real-time data for us, but it also can be a channel for helping people to monitor and change their behaviour. And we're hearing far more about things like Fitbits, the wearable technology, and that's all interlinking. And so if you're doing an obesity or a health program, then there should be some partnerships that are going on with these kind of organisations, because they're all part of the service solution to the problem. Telling someone that they need to go lose weight with an ad isn't really helpful to someone who sees themselves in the mirror every day and knows that they're overweight. They need something more concrete to help them, and this is where technology is really coming to its fore. So as I've said, marketing energy use is a really tall ask. It's tough. It's a really boring product category. So how do you make it exciting? So we started off looking at the motivations and barriers. So like a good marketer started with the consumer insight. And this actually shifted the strategy substantially when we actually looked at what is a low-income earner in Brisbane and what is their lifestyle. I think we have a lot of stereotypes about how people live and how they act. Now, we weren't dealing with people in crisis. We were dealing with just the average person whose life is pretty stable, but they have a low income. So bearing that in mind, you'll see some of these are what you expect, but some of them aren't. So they live in the now, a lot of time at home, so they tend to use a lot more electricity. If it's summer in Brisbane, it's hot, so you put the air conditioning on. If you're going to be at home, you might as well be comfortable. There's a strong sense of lack of control, and they're very sceptical of messages that tell you how you can improve your energy consumption. They just go, yeah, it's not possible, they just don't believe it. They're very financially motivated because they don't have much money. What we found interesting was the bottom three. When you walk into a low-income earner's home, it looks like a middle-class home. They've got multiple devices. In fact, they had 4+ devices, multiple television sets. They were all connected to the internet. They all had smartphones. The house didn't look like it was poverty-stricken. They didn't own it. They didn't have life insurance, they didn't have all of those other bits and pieces, but at first glance, it looked really middle class. And part of that is it's part of the aspirations of Australia to be middle class. If you ask most people in Australia what class they're in, they'll all say middle class. The very rich won't, the very poor won't. But people who are sort of upper lower or lower upper will always classify themselves as middle. It's part of, I think, the mindset of Australia is we're all egalitarian, we're all working. And if you get sort of too big for your boots, then someone will come and criticise you and cut you down. So that shifted our strategy substantially and said, yeah, we can do smartphones, we can do games, because they're all connected. They're very digitally engaged, and we knew then that this was going to work. So we then did a literature review of best practice and said what's in the journals, what's in cases that are written up, what is everybody doing, and we distilled it down to these areas. I'm going to make the PowerPoint available, so I'm not going to go through all the details here. But effectively, we use these as our design principles to underpin the program and to make sure that whatever we came up with was simple and visual, it was customised, it had rewards, it had a sense of progression. We were able to meet needs at different stages, and it was really motivating and encouraging for people. So the program strategy was that it needed to be a digital solution. We couldn't get away from that. So if the consumer research had come back and said they aren't digitally connected, we would have been screwed, basically. So good thing we knew a little bit about what we're doing before we went in. Wrapped around that, we decided we needed to have rewards and reinforcement. In fact, a lot of the budget has gone to the rewards and reinforcement in this program. And then the outer layer is it needed to be evaluated. The money that the government provided was all about testing different approaches. They were pilot programs to create an evidence base of what works and what doesn't. So the National Scientific Organisation, the CSIRO, is the governing organisation that has basically set a series of common metrics that every program needs to have so they can compare across programs. And they've monitored our research plan and our data plans and are giving continuous feedback to ensure that what we come up with is highly rigorous and can be used to inform future government investment in this space. Being a good academic and a social marketer, I always use a guiding framework. And it took us about 8 months to find the right guiding framework for this approach. It was based on the consumer insight. So based on what we knew, we figured there's no point in going down a cognitive information processing approach because that assumes that if you tell people stuff, you change their attitudes, then their behaviour will follow. But that requires a fair amount of effort on people's part, and this was not an area that people were willing to expend any kind of effort. It might be different if it's cancer treatment. It might be different if it's maybe using a condom for the first time, but this is not the case. So because it was not high involvement, there was not high risks, there was very low interest, it pushed us down the other pathway of a behavioural approach, which was all about rewards and reinforcement. It was all about not expecting people to think too much, and it was predicated on people acting first and then learning through the experience. So the theories that we then used were operant conditioning and the experiential learning hierarchy. And so effectively what the program does is you play the games, you reflect and analyse, you somehow come up with a different sense of meaning around what it saves money, how electricity works, and then you go and experiment offline in the home, and we reward that behaviour as well. So this is, again, it's in the PowerPoint for those who are interested. This is a customer journey map. So effectively, people register in the program. There's a common start date. So it's a bit like a challenge. It's a bit like a 6-week challenge. Everybody signs up and everyone goes through as a cohort. We thought about people just signing up and participating as it went, but we felt that had sort of less fun about it. And it was going to be a lot harder to manage. So, and I know that we see this with fitness programs where everyone signs up and does boot camp and runs around and loses weight and sort of talks and everyone's going through at the same time. And then you sign up for the next round. We know those sorts of things work really well to keep people motivated, and it gives you an end date. So people aren't signing up forever and going, oh, I don't have to think about energy every day for the rest of my life. They're going, I'm going to sign up for 6 weeks, and at the end of that program, as long as I meet the business rules, then I'm going to get some sort of reward. And the rewards were pretty substantial. People were allocated into 1 or 2 groups. It was either a small energy efficient appliance, like a portable barbecue, or it's a really big one, like a fridge. And so we just randomly allocated people to that. What's been interesting in the first round is that a lot of people didn't actually realise they were going to get the rewards. They didn't pay any attention to it. They just wanted to play the game. So I'm thinking, oh, we're going to save a heap of money. Spending all that money on fridges. But anyway, that's good for down the track when we don't have this kind of money to spend on it. And then finally there was a whole bunch of post-program follow-ups. So that's sort of like the big picture approach. And I'm going to show you what the games and the behaviours look like. So this was a tough gig to work out. We needed to have games around certain behaviours, but there's so many things you can do in the home to reduce energy. Where do you focus? Well, these are renters. They can't change anything structurally. They can't put solar power in. They can't put insulation in. All they can do is very minor things within the home. So we worked with the energy company Energex to find out what are all of the behaviours and the things that you can do in the home and what's the payback in dollars and in kilowatts. And then there was this very complicated algorithm to then sort of distill it down to 3 behaviours that could have the biggest impact but were simple and easy to do. And so these were the behaviours. It was about switching off appliances and lights. It was about using cold water and using fans, not air conditioning, or keeping the air conditioning at around about 24 degrees, not 19, as my daughter, who's somewhere around here, likes to put the air conditioning on. So they're the 3 things that we thought, if they can modify this, they're going to see a dollar result. And so we needed to build the games around getting those behaviours. So, meet the Watt family. So we have kilowatt down the bottom in green, the pet. We have megawatt, we have milliwatt. And these are the Watt family. So you pick your avatar when you go into the game. And then that avatar is the one that takes you through the process and reminds you and gives all sorts of bits and pieces. I'd really like to get them as plush toys, but, you know, we've got them printed on a 3D printer, so I'm keep going, we need the plush toys, we need the plush toys. So you basically register and then you've got 3 games. Now these are free to play on the iPhone. I'm not sure that they're available outside the program on Android devices. It's a requirement of Apple that all games that are on there are not proprietary, so you have to make them available to anybody, either payment or free. So that's what we do. So if you're interested, you just go to Reduce Your Juice in the App Store and you can download these and play them. Pretty rubbish at 2 of them. I was really good at the power rate. So this one here, basically, you've got to keep the temperature at 24 degrees and basically blow away the sun. If you use up too much of your juice, the scare conditioner comes on, and then the game's over. Power rate, you're just flicking the switches and it just speeds up, so it's a bit like Joules or Tetris, if you like those kind of games. And Fully Loaded is a tilt game where you've got to keep on the right side of the line and use cold water. So pretty basic, but people really like them. And they're based on some of the more popular games, so Angry Birds, Dumb Ways to Die. We did, again, an extensive search of the really addictive popular games and basically sort of stole the ideas. And use the agency for that. So the business rules were that the games unlock one at a time, sequentially every 2 weeks, so you can only play 1 game at a time, but you could go back. The players would only progress and earn rewards if they played enough, and we had some small little rewards along the way that got posted out and delivered to them as well, so like energy efficient power packs and those sorts of things, just to keep them in the game. We had 4 treatment groups because we wanted to also test how much communication did we need to have with people through SMS and with Facebook. And Facebook started off being a really minor part, but became really dominant throughout the program. In the end, it became our major recruitment source. And it really became engaging with people posting their high scores, taking photos of the appliances as they were delivered. People really seemed to get into that very much. And we had 2 different types of rewards. I haven't yet drilled down into that data because that's pretty time and labour intensive, and I'm going to do it once the program's finished at the end of the year. And we have a control group, so people at the same time periods in the same season who are not in the program, who are just filling in the same surveys before and after, sort of 6 weeks apart, so that we can benchmark what's happening in the program with what's also going on in real life. Because there may be changes that are going on because people see ads on TV, or the weather, the temperature drops down, and then any change we get in the program is actually not the result of the program, it's actually something else. So throughout the program, again, because of the reward strategy, they're getting badges, they're getting status updates. We also had educational scaffolding, so we had power hacks. This is where the Facebook page came in really handy. we started putting up really interesting, unusual little power hacks that people may not think about. And then other people started adding their own in. And that became really, really useful for sharing little quirky tips about how you can reduce your energy consumption. In terms of the recruitment source, we started off using a lot of agencies. We thought it's going to be really hard to get low-income earners and you can't just buy a list of them. So we thought, let's work with the community agencies that have the contacts. That proved to really not work very well at all. And we're still not really sure why. People are getting a free fridge potentially at the end of this program. We thought that the agencies would really embrace it and really communicate this, and it just really didn't work all that well. What ended up being is social media and people referring friends. And we're now in the second wave, and we've done 100% recruitment. We filled up in 3 days for the program, and it was all through social media. And it was when people were getting their fridge and they actually believed that the program worked. So it's like people signed up and I think they didn't really believe they'd get anything. And when the fridge rocked up and they took the photo, they immediately went and tagged their friend and reduced and said, you've got to sign up, you've got to do it. So they became our brand advocates, and yeah, we just booked out really, really quickly. So I think it's slow in the beginning using social media, but once the word gets out and once you're genuine and authentic about delivering on your promise, then it's a really excellent source. So, did it work? These, we've got data in multiple forms. We've got pre and post surveys. We've got energy data from the electrical company 12 months prior, 12 months after. And we've also got game analytics that's live real time. So we've actually got a dashboard that's set up that monitors at any given point in time all the results and where we're sitting. So this is sort of the top level results that we were looking to see. We wanted to see if there's a change in attitudes, in habits, those specific behaviours. We had a set of 10. We wanted to know if they were motivated, if they had opportunity to be energy efficient, if they had the ability. We wanted to know what their intentions were to continue this behaviour, and importantly, we wanted to know what their quarterly bill was before and after. We wanted to know, did we save them any money? Because that's what's important to them. So we had a baseline and the control group, and this was just for the first wave where we had a couple of hundred people just testing out the process. Basically, we saw no change at all in the 6 weeks period at the same time with just general Brisbane residents, and we saw a significant change in every one of those metrics. More importantly, we saved $44 off the average quarterly bill basically in 6 weeks. So that translates to about $176 a year for a low-income customer. But we had one lady who saved $200 off her quarterly electricity bill, and she was a single mum in a really rundown sort of suburb. So that was great. The media loved it. Channel 9 got onto that one. The Lord Mayor thought it was fantastic because he got to be on Channel 9. And they did this really great interview with his mother of 4 kids, and she just went, I had no idea we could save money doing such simple behaviours. So that was a really great testimonial. So we had 214 participants, which is a bit slow. Again, it was about $176 per annum energy savings. Very significant positive shifts in everything we wanted to. 98.5% liked the program overall. That's an amazing sort of result. 8.5, almost 9,000 likes, shares and comments on Facebook. And bearing in mind we've only got 214 participants, that was pretty good. 96% would recommend to friends and family, and 92% like the power hacks. What was very interesting to us is there was a minimum gameplay required to get the fridge. People went above and beyond the gameplay. They played 6 times more than they needed to get the rewards. So this is telling us there was something intrinsically engaging about the program that was above and beyond, I'm going to get a fridge or I'm going to get a barbecue at the end, that they were enjoying the game. And we've got a whole bunch of metrics looking at customer value, different aspects of the game to sort of drill down as to what they actually really liked about it. In terms of the email opens, we could see that over time, when we started, about 50% of the emails we sent to participants would get opened, and then we're getting up close to about 90% towards wrap-up. So that's really good because it saves you having to constantly just keep communicating, especially about the rules and reminders with people. So why did it work? Well, we know that people change their habits. They stop using the air conditioning as much as they had been using. We saw significant change in motivation, opportunity and ability, and we had academic measures for those items. People felt really empowered. We saw a significant improvement in self-efficacy. They felt far more confident about being able to manage their energy bills. We saw significant improvements in customer value, so they really felt like they were getting something out of this. When we looked at the stage of change that they were at, as we expected, most people were in the consideration stage of change. Why would you sign up for a program if you weren't interested? It sort of, doesn't make sense. By the end of the program, they'd moved to the next stage of change, which was preparation. So that was really useful for us to see that they'd made that shift. We did the same questions in the baseline control group and actually saw a very even spread in the population across all 5 stages of change and no movement in 6 weeks. And they really liked the rewards. They found them really engaging. What would be useful for us, and we did ask the question, and we asked them, would you have played, would you have participated if you didn't get the fridge? And half of them said yes, they would have. Now, whether that's actually true or not, well, yet to find out. So again, I've left this up here for you as a takeaway. Key success factors: you need to have sufficient funding for the program elements. We had an ad agency, we had a PR agency, we had visual designers. I was involved as the social marketing strategist and the evaluation manager. And none of my time has been paid for because it was a collaborative research project. They gave us a lump of money. I then paid a bunch of research assistants, put a PhD student through it, put an honours student through it, and so therefore my time is the in-kind contribution of the university. But if you had to cost my time, it would have been pretty substantial. We had everyone who needed to be involved in terms of collaboration. We had the energy partner, we had the digital experts in the agency, we had the sustainability unit, and we had the scholarship side. The program design was based on rigorous insight. We spent a year in the design phase, going backwards and forwards, working out what we needed to do, and we were willing to walk away from the agency that we had in the beginning after we'd sunk about $200,000 into the development of it, because it just wasn't going to work. It was based on best practice principles. It was short. It created a challenge. We know games work best when you have a challenge, so the 6 to 8 week challenge works really well. So in the future, I would actually roll this out in exactly the same way. We did it this way initially because it was a pilot, but if I was doing some sort of program with low involvement, I would create a challenge period. Everybody signs up, everyone participates, and then you go to the next one. They then become your advocates for the next lot joining, and if they've lost weight or done whatever the behaviour of the challenge was, they will recommend you, and their recommendations are far more compelling to the next lot that come in than any marketing message that you can communicate. And then the last one was the branding communication. Everything was on brand. We spent a lot of time trying to develop something that was friendly, that was cheerful, that would be compelling, and then every touch point from the SMS to the Facebook page to the research page. And believe me, it's really hard to get an academic research that sounds friendly when you've got the university ethics policy and you've got all the academic language. It's hard to make that look easy and interesting and compelling. We used a very good survey software tool called Fluid that basically reconfigured the survey to be viewable properly on a mobile, on a tablet, and on the internet, and it just reconfigured it to look decent. It had little jigsaw piece puzzles, it had sliders, it's got a lot of functionality that just make the experience of doing an academic survey just a lot better. So I can really recommend that one to you. The communication was simple. It was appropriate for the target audience, and it wasn't patronising and we know best and we're going to tell you, poor silly low-income earners, what you should be doing. So all of those elements, I think, so far, are what has made the program successful. So basically the future, we're in wave 2, we're going to report back to the federal government in the new year. But if you're interested in working with QUT, we have a school of design that we work with, we have a gaming lab, and we've got the business school. We all work together on these kinds of interventions, and we can do it remotely, and I will be back to DC. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your time and that you got through it all. That's amazing. So I know that we can take a few questions. Perhaps we may lose our video battery, and I know some of you may have places to go, so we won't be offended if you step out. But right before I say that, I do want to let you guys know that we are going to have our December networking event at Ogilvy, so we thank them for hosting us. I don't quite have the date yet, but look for it on the meetup or in an email. So, any questions for Dr. Russell Bennett?
So thank you. This was fascinating. I don't think I've seen a social marketing program that found such high offline behavior change when a lot of the campaign focus was on, a smartphone, on game behavior. Did you have other campaign materials that were more focused on, like, hey, also do this in your house, not just for the game?
Yes, when they signed up, they got a welcome pack.
Okay.
They got some energy efficient devices and stickers and bits and pieces to kind of remind them. They would get reminders in the game, go, and now go and do this offline.
Gotcha.
We would have liked to have had more, but the budget prohibited it, and really we're trying to road test the digital solution.
Mm-hmm.
So we were surprised. I had an honour student actually go and interview people in the homes and before and after they played the game, and they got no rewards for that. It was sort of external to the program. One of the things she noticed was that the families would play it together and they would compete together and then they would talk about it, and it became a conversation starter. So if you say to the kids, right, we're all going to sit down and we're going to talk about energy, just watch them like disappear, or they're all on their phones, or the plugs are in. But if they're playing the game with mum and dad or the rest of the household, it becomes a reason to talk about it, it becomes salient, and then the behaviours follow. And what we found is we looked at 6 different households, and they're all different structures. We had a male share house, female share house, a lesbian household, single parent, and a traditional household. Every household had the mum, dad, and the kids. And it was interesting hearing in the boys' share house, where one of the guys sort of went, I'm the dad, and I pay the bills and make everyone do it. And the other one was like, yeah, I'm the mother. And the others went, we're the kids. We're told. That mimicking of the traditional family unit, it was really strong. So we're going to use that in future designs of the game to get people talking. And I'd really like people to have a separate score, be able to say we're part of the one household, and then they can see their own little leaderboard. They can compare against households like them. So there's a whole bunch of other things that we'd really like to develop in the game to make sure those offline behaviours occur.
Yep, and which is a great way of not seeming paternalistic, right?
Yes.
Like we talked about earlier.
Yeah,
the whole one.
yeah, but it's a conversation piece, and it's a way of getting something on the agenda that nobody wants to really discuss.
Very interesting project. Since you have the slide, the future, Sarah, just wondering what your projection is regarding the continuation of these behaviors among these same households in the future. And are you going to do anything, reminders or whatever else? Is it in the plan to help prompt
Yeah, I'd like,
continuation?
we've got the details, so I can go back, just even in my own research, and just recontact them. It's not part of the pilot program. I think what we'll see is, first of all, let's see what the natural drop-off is, to know whether or not it does get off. Part of the reason that people weren't saving money is because they didn't know, and we knew that you couldn't just tell people. So there's a level of embedded knowledge, and we sort of took a stealthy learning approach where they sort of learnt in spite of themselves. And we know that because we measured their knowledge before and after, and we know their knowledge has gone up. So we're hoping that it becomes retained, but there will be a drop-off, and we'll monitor that, and hopefully in the next round of the game that we will get some funding to sort of do a more ongoing approach. But it's always the problem with campaigns that have got a shelf life.
Yes.
Tom.
Thank you for the presentation. More importantly, thank you for all of the many ways in which you're contributing to the advancement of social marketing, not only in Australia, but around the globe, including here in Washington. In the United States, many of the electric utility companies that are involved in this pursuit, trying to get people to be more energy efficient, have tried lots of different approaches and have concluded that one of the most effective strategies is to make consumers aware of their consumption patterns vis-a-vis their neighbors, vis-a-vis the Joneses, if you will,
Yeah.
and touching upon the motivation that people have to compare themselves to their next door neighbors and to their friends and so on. And that has seemingly, probably in large part prompted by the influence of a group called O-Power, that seemingly has been one of the more successful methods here in the States. Does that enter into your work at all?
In our bills, you automatically get, this is what people in your neighbourhood or in Brisbane are spending, and here's what you spend, and that's already been on the bills for years, and it hasn't really made much difference. It is different if you go, yes, but in a single home household or a 7-person household or whatever it might be, we would like to build that in more. But I think it's a lot of people don't believe they've got the ability to control it, or that if they turn the light switches off, it'll actually make any difference. You know, so they sort of hear about the information and they don't believe they can save. The other thing is, what we think is a high bill is not what other people think is a high bill. We were quite shocked that people were paying $800-900 a quarter in an electricity bill, and they didn't think that was high. We had one lady in the sample, it was $1,800 for the quarter. And I thought that was a data entry error. I sort of had a look and went, no, that can't be right. But we checked it against the electricity usage, and no, it was quite correct. It was $1,800 a quarter. And that's like a huge amount of money. But they do the trade-off and go, I'm at home, I'm not working, so I can't afford to go to a hotel, you know, and have a holiday, so what's $800 a quarter to have the lifestyle that I've got? And they're quite willing to pay, so they don't care what the norms are, because they've done the mental trade-off and gone, well, you know, I won't have the life insurance, but I will have the aircon.
Were there any cues to action or specific messaging for maybe the secondary audience of kids, or did you sort of rely on the primary audience of their parents and adults in the household to kind of bring them into the game and like pass along those behaviors to the kids?
The way the game was set up, and it came down to the funding that we had to get the game designed, was it was only one person in the household could sign up. I really wanted to have everyone in the household get their own avatar and sign up, and then we could link it, because I knew the kids had played.
Right.
We have asked questions about who in the survey that who actually did play, and we just haven't crunched those numbers. But the next iteration, it'd be right, now that you've signed the household up, everybody pick their avatar and be part of whatever the household name is that you can agree if you've all got the same surnames or not. And then we'll track the role of kids, the role of adults, how they interact. I think that's going to be far more insightful, because we know that the kids love it, and we know the kids take their parents' phones and tablets, and that they play the games that are on there, whether you're or not, you want them to.
Like you said, in an age where technology is advancing and everyone is on a screen, what were the strategies that you used leading up to the game launch, and what were the best practices that you used to get the word out?
It was Facebook. So if you go to the Facebook page, so it's just reduce your use. Again, you just find it that way. You can see everything that we've said in the lead up. We've just launched week 1 now in the second wave, so you can see all that lead up. About creating excitement, and it was about giving some power hacks, giving ideas to people, going, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. You know, it's next week, and it was countdown and getting a bit of excitement going. But it was definitely the Facebook page.
Facebook was your main.
That was it. We did it in a very minor way for wave 1, and we just really relied on it for wave 2, because that's what people like, and they're engaging with it, and loads of comments that have gone up.
My experience with MOA, actually, I had used or seen that term before. I came to it not from the academic point of view, but from the implementation for city government, dealing with waste issues for DC. And so I'm interested in motivation, opportunity, and ability. I would have said opportunity, then ability, then motivation, where I would see, do you provide the tools, or as a facilitator, are you providing the tools? Are you giving people the education to understand how to use them properly? And then do they have a sense of context or ownership to actually participate? I'd just like to know more about that.
I don't see it so much as a hierarchy, although no one's going to be interested in the opportunity unless they're motivated, I would think. So I tend to treat them as 3 sort of equal areas that you've got to be motivated, you've got to have the opportunity, you've got to have the ability in order to do any kind of behaviour. And wherever there's a deficit in one of those, it shifts what the strategy is. So Michael Rothschild, the guy behind Roku, wrote a really good paper in the Journal of Marketing called Carrots, Sticks and Promises, and it talks about different combinations of motivation, opportunity and ability, and then whether to use marketing, whether to use education, or whether to use policy or legislation, or whether to use a combination. I really like that approach, just sort of as a diagnostic tool, to sort of give me a bit of a heads up about where to go. We knew we didn't have people highly motivated in this particular area. We knew they had the opportunity, but we weren't sure about the ability side of it. So we knew we needed to lift motivation and ability to match the opportunity, and that's what's occurred. But yeah, it's an interesting idea that there might be some sort of ordering or hierarchy there.
I just came back from Sydney, from spending 6 months there, and I was actually appalled at the level of smoking by people on the
Oh,
street.
you need to come to
on the
Brisbane very
streets.
much.
I've been there, I love Brisbane too. And as you probably know, there is quite a campaign in Australia to try to reduce smoking among the general public. They've got some rather gross pictures on cigarette packs.
Yeah.
They have some rather gross TV ads, and sorrowful ones too, of people that have been afflicted by lung cancer or other kinds of things, basically right there in front of you. And so I'm just wondering, with life and death kinds of social campaigns like that, is it appropriate to have games as a basis there?
Absolutely. There's a game actually that's a smoking one. In fact, there's two. There's the Quit Buddy, and there's a really good one for pregnant women. So a very marginalised group. And it's called Quit for You, Quit for Two. It's done by the same agency that worked with us, and that's one of the reasons we use them. BCM, they're a fantastic social marketing agency. And it was aimed to help them beat the craving. So it was part of a broader program, but you played the game, and when you felt the craving, these games lasted for about 3 minutes, and that's the length of time that a craving is. So it was to help distract you in a broader program, and it was downloaded by about half of the known population in Australia of pregnant women, which is a massive penetration, but it's a hidden market, so it's very hard to quantify. And from early results, it was very effective in helping them to quit and to not smoke. And they're really cute little games. You can pick your baby's name, you name the baby early, and the baby sends you text messages and says, "Thank you, Mummy, for not smoking." It's a really nice little game, and the visuals are really, really cute. So that's a really good one to work, but you can't use the game unless you actually register. So, you know, I had to register and I pretend, you know, I named my baby Sooty because the cat was nearby. So Sooty, the baby, was texting me and saying thank you for not smoking. So you do have to sort of sign up and say how far pregnant you are. But yeah, absolutely, it's worked really well. And the Quit Buddy has worked really, really well as well. So I think as long as you do it with the right tone, and it's got to be part of a broader program. The Queensland Government just did a parliamentary inquiry into the use of mobile phone apps and technology in health, in the health promotion area, to know whether or not they should be investing in using this sort of approach in the future. And we were a major contributor to the final report and the recommendations that they put together. They do have that available on their website, and they've done a really comprehensive evidence-based approach about does it work, how does it work, when to use it from a behaviour change point of view. So certainly governments are interested, but you've got to be mindful of the context and not be too disrespectful. In saying that, Australians like humour, so sometimes humour can work really well. So.
Professor Greer and American University for hosting and the great food. There's some left, so I hope everybody snags some on their way out. And to the International Social Marketing Association for letting us get together and have these great networking events. So.
And to Karen.
And Karen, thank you. Oh, look at this. Everybody take a picture and tweet this. Thank you so much.